Well, hello and welcome to India Questions. It is very, very rare, and this program has been around for a long time, to get, in my opinion, two of the really greatest human beings that we have living on this planet today, and both together. And they've never been together before, although I've had them individually, and they have so much in common. Bill Gates and Aamir Khan.
Polio worldwide last year was less than 300 cases. It's only in 3 countries, and I spend the majority of my time on polio because we've orchestrated a 6-year campaign.
We feel that malnutrition is a big problem that India is facing, and we want you to work in that area.
Great.
So I was, quite impressed because they were across parties, and there was obviously nothing political happening over here.
That's right. Let's have another question. Young girl in yellow there at the back, yeah.
I have this question. Whenever I see, when we take newspaper in the morning, I see the 2 different worlds we are living in. In one world, we have people like Aamir Khan and Mr. Gates, where they're trying to make it a better place. But then again, they have this, you have this business world, all this trips going on, and where you're trying to curb the production of generic drugs, which is very, very important for certain people. For example, HIV/AIDS patients, the drugs which are produced in India, they are very important for patients in certain African countries and, of course, world over. So there's always also this campaign going against production of these generic drugs and to extend the IPRs and I'm not saying whether it's right or wrong, but then there's always a dualism in everything. So how do you think can we tackle this thing? This is a very important aspect of health.
If you allow generic drugs and copying, then you won't get so much investment and research. But on the other hand, if you go to the other extreme, then you get drugs that are far too expensive for most of the population to use.
Yeah, it's a tough one, but as far as I understand it, when you patent a drug or when you come out with a new drug, I think that you are allowed to use it, without it going generic for about 10 years. There's a particular period in which you can earn, as a company,
India,
you can
kind of found a loophole around it.
And then after 10 years or a certain period, then it's allowed to go generic. If I'm not mistaken, that is what is followed, which seems to me a fairly good model. And because it's important for companies to invest in research and development and for them to earn, I suppose, back what they have invested. At the same time, the benefit of that should ultimately also come to people who are less privileged. And I think generic medicines in that sense is very important. What we see is happening in Rajasthan today and is quite amazing. The government in Rajasthan has shops. The government has opened shops all across the state in which they supply generic medicines, and they have a department which purchases medicines from all these various big companies, pharmaceutical companies,
and subsidizes
at very low rates and subsidizes it and sells it. Gives it free, actually.
Okay. Yeah. What's your answer to that? It's a tough question.
Well, actually, the ideal system is fairly clear, which is that even during the period that they have their patent, that the poorest should just either get it free, subsidized by the government, or pay the marginal cost, so the lowest cost possible.
For the poor.
And then people who have higher incomes need to pay a higher price because, after all, we want these research activities to invent new medicines, more vaccines, more drugs. And so what's been done, which is very imperfect, is that the U.S. pays over 70% of the profit margin on medicines comes from buyers in the U.S. and then other rich countries are some of that. And so it's been done sort of on a country-by-country basis where countries in Africa all get this very low price. Now, India somewhat complicates the picture because you can't really pick the right price for India because it has a middle class that should probably contribute to the research, and it's got poor people who should get the very lowest price. So figuring out how you differentiate the private system versus the state system for India, it's tricky. But I feel like we will be able to strike a balance here After all, you want lots of research jobs in India. A lot of these great drug and vaccine companies are now growing up in the country.
And of course, in India, it's difficult to identify who's rich and who's poor when you're actually doling out medicines. So we have this Aadhaar system. Nandan Nilekani is working on a system where you will actually identify and target the poor and target the rich separately. Unless you do that, you wouldn't be able to provide subsidized medicines and full price medicines. So it's a complex issue that requires, but the solution is in sight.
The principle, yeah.
The principle, right, yes. Whether the solution or... Yes, sir, in front. You're not a young student, but you're about a little older than Aamir, I think. My age.
I'm Rajiv. I'm a pediatrician, a doctor who trained in the US and returned to this country about 12 years ago. Sir, the whole issue that we are all discussing here, whose responsibility is to protect the children? India produces, we have 27 million babies who are born in this country. We have 440 million children. So we are creating one Australia every year. So the thing is, if we say it's the government's responsibility alone, you cannot achieve those goals. But if all of us collectively, like you said just now, and the proximate community where the children are born, say the panchayats in the villages. So what we have done is, a group has adopted a village called Bango, which is about 70 kilometers from Delhi, and we can go there weekly and make our visits, and it's just been a wonderful, a shining example, because not only we have seen the survivals improving over there, but children are now in school, because we are looking beyond survival into child development.
So are you suggesting this is something that everybody should do?
I think one should reach out to the communities. We have to do it.
How many of you actually do some kind of social work, go out to villages once in a while?
Oh, that's a good number, yeah.
That's about 70%, and the other 30% are the honest ones.
But what was your question? Did you have a question, sir?
Sir, my question was this: whose responsibility is to protect the children? I personally am trying to find my own answers, and my question is, whose responsibility? The problem is big. You cannot blame the government. We need to contribute. So whose responsibility it is to take care of these children? Like, vaccinations are one of the most effective preventive ways of, but there's an expense to it, and government sometimes is not able to pay. Then who's supposed to do it? Our community, our proximate community?
You asked for the question.
Yeah, well, no, I think when it comes to healthcare and it comes to payment of vaccines for the poor children who can't afford it perhaps, then that certainly should be paid. I mean, we are all paying our taxes in any case, either directly or indirectly. And I think the wealth that is accumulated by the country every year is not a small amount. Certainly we should be using enough of it to make sure that our children have the right to health, from the time that they are born, or from the time even before they are born. And that right can be, in the amount that we decide to spend on them, that can be taken care of.
Bill Gates, whose responsibility? How much is it of our, as individuals, our responsibility?
Well, for immunization, to have that system that reaches out and gets every child, that really that's primary health care, and it's a public good. It falls pretty squarely on the government. Now, they can use NGOs or private sector to help them a little bit, but it's up to them, and they should be elected or not based on that. But as was said, the parent needs to be educated, whether it's nutrition or exclusive breastfeeding that you talked about. Often women's groups are very powerful to get the word out about these best practices, and those are often kind of grassroots organized at the village level without the government having to play much of a role at all.
Are any of these problems intractable? I think I've heard you say that we've got deaths mainly due to diarrhea, pneumonia, and malaria. Diarrhea, you seem to be now taking on at least one form of it pretty effectively, very soon. Malaria has been an ongoing problem.
Yeah, malaria on a global basis is a big killer. A little bit less in India, but that's a huge investment. And there's new drugs, and there's hope that if we can get polio done, that we'll have the credibility and energy and a few new tools, then the world will go out and take on malaria eradication as the next big global campaign.
But DDT
kills mosquitoes, and so you can cut the rate of biting down. The other new tool that's very powerful is called a bed net. So you sleep under this bed net at night, and so all the mosquitoes that bite you at night not only are blocked from doing that, but there's insecticide there that's actually killing those mosquitoes. That's brought the death rate down from about 1 million a year worldwide to under 700,000. But we need a few more tools before we can push down and have the goal of zero in mind.
And are mosquitoes now immune against DDT?
Yeah, it's a strange thing. If you use DDT intensely, then the mosquitoes will evolve so that it doesn't kill them. Because we haven't used DDT much recently,
they've forgotten about it.
Yeah, they've evolved back to be DDT sensitive. And so for indoor spraying, DDT is fantastic. Okay. It was viewed as a mistake to use it in agriculture because it was causing some problems.
Right.
But using it against mosquitoes in a targeted way actually works very well.
Okay, great. This young lady in front here.
Thank you. My comment entails a critique of the media, and especially television and radio, because I think these media lack the rigor and the nuance that subjects like sanitation and malnutrition require. I also think that the debates around sanitation and malnutrition in media remain sanitized of topics like caste and religion, because what we don't hear is that at an Anganwadi or a nutrition center which is dominated by upper caste, a Muslim woman and a Dalit woman feels discouraged to even take her child for that vaccination. And what we also do not hear is that if we're giving toilet loans to poor people in Bihar, then we're probably giving a second toilet loan to somebody who already has a toilet, but excluding a Muslim person or a Dalit person who does not own that piece of land that he or she is living on, which is a mandatory requirement in giving out that toilet loan. So I think that as concerned participants in this nation building, we would like to see the news media, our actors, our philanthropists, engage the middle classes on these issues. So probably the next advertisement that you do, or the next proposal that you sign off, or the next show that NDTV does, these issues along caste and religion need to be discussed more explicitly, because if there is one medium that can change mindsets powerfully, that is the medium of television and radio. I'd be keen to hear your comments.
Aamir?
Yeah, I think the media has a very important role to play in that. I completely agree with what she's saying. So I think the media does have an important role to play, and I too would like to see more of that.
I hope today is an example of that. At least you spoke. Carry on. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I think what you're saying is right, and we need to do more of that. The media is doing a fair amount, but I think that.
But she's saying it doesn't really. It kind of skirts around the
issue.
It does.
I think she's right. No, I think she's right. We don't give it enough value. We don't give it the edge that it really has already. I think that's news actually also. Because a lot of media feel that, we need to sell our newspaper as well, or my channel needs to have TRP, which I completely understand. But I think that these are newsworthy things.
And it's something that you mentioned earlier, that we do a couple of programs. We do a show called India Matters, where we do these and we have documentaries. And everybody said, you're going to do that, nobody's going to watch. But actually the viewership's very high.
It is.
Just like your show, where everybody said, so it's not as though people don't want to.
No, people want to watch. And I think that, what she's saying is completely true. I agree that the media needs to do a lot more, and I would like to see that happen. I think but the caste issue was one of the topics that we picked up in SMJ, and it is something that affects all of us.
The women's groups, if they're done right, can be very inclusive, and it's really one of the measures they have as they try and do these well.
If we just start looking at the girl child differently, then half our problems will get solved over there.
Is the media important? Was it overestimated, overhyped?
Well, I think that the media has to be given facts. So, can we measure this appropriately? If we knew caste by caste what the infant mortality was, even in different areas, or looked different religious backgrounds, and where you could see a differential, that I think there'd be an outcry. So to the degree we don't measure these things, it's easy for them to go unnoticed. I do think a few years ago I went out and stayed overnight in a village in UP with Rahul Gandhi, and he was really pointing out that the women's groups, if they're done right, can be very inclusive. And it's really one of the measures they have as they try and do these well. And they're kind of a voice that goes around the intermediaries, the big man in the village, or the things that are blocking a lot of these well-intended government programs of getting out to somebody. There is hope in the future that the digital registration and the direct delivery of cash will also circumvent some of these blocking factors. But India's just at the beginning of seeing if that can really make a difference. So, measurement, new delivery systems, and inclusive groups at the village level probably are the best hope. And media should track the progress on these things.
Right. You meet Rahul Gandhi a lot. You met him today as well. Is there a connect there on these issues?
Well, he was very keen to say to me that, hey, some of these things you think are being delivered aren't being delivered. And it was kind of refreshing. Usually politicians are telling you how great government programs are. To have somebody say, oh no, be realistic about whether it's health or agriculture. You need to think through these very complex dynamics. That was very interesting. And we're just here to help. So we're open to people telling us what the problems are, how we can be constructive, and that was I think my wife Melinda knew it instinctually, but for me that visit was pretty eye-opening in terms of the importance of women's groups.
Right.
Actually, that is what during SMJ, one of my biggest learnings. There were two big learnings for me personally, and one of them was that a lot of our problems and issues that we face in India as a society boils down to how we look at women. A lot of our issues boils down to how we look at women. One single thing.
Yes.
And there's another. There were two things that came through for me, big learnings. One was that if we just start looking at the girl child differently, then half our problems will get solved over there only. So just look at it. First, we don't allow them to be born.
Right.
Okay? When we allow them to be born, we don't give them equal opportunities, whether it's healthcare or whether it's education. So all the girls who survive through all of that, the dice is loaded completely against you if you're a woman in India, at least at this point of time.
I want to make one correction. In NDTV,
except in NDTV,
70% of women, there's a dice loaded against men.
That's because you're a charming man. That's because you're a charming man.
No, actually, it's also true. Indian women are smarter and better than Indian men.
Yeah.
Not too many men clapping.
No, but I'm saying that's not important here. Who's smarter and who's not is completely unimportant. I'm saying they have a right to life whether they are smart or not.
Yeah.
Whether I'm smart or not, I should get healthcare.
Yes.
I don't have to be intelligent to get healthcare. I have the right to healthcare whether I'm intelligent or not. So my point is that we have to be fair about these things. So the way we look at women is that's something we really need to change.
No healthcare for dropouts.
And and the other thing is, wherever we saw people working together as a community, putting aside religion, putting aside caste, really working together as human beings, those are the places where we found that they were prosperous, happy, even financially and economically they were dynamic because of the fact that they were working as a community. So these are the big two learnings that we felt, that when people work as a community, they prosper. When the moment you start thinking about yourself, then things start going downhill from there. The moment you start doing things which you realize are good for everyone, those are the areas which are prospering. Those are the villages that are prospering. The moment I feel, I'll tell you in water, for example. I want water. I don't care whether the other villagers get it or not. So I have got a little bit of money, perhaps a little more money than the others. So my borewell will be deeper than the other people's.
Right.
So I can pull out water from a deeper depth and I get my water. But borewells intrinsically are harmful to the whole village in any case. We shouldn't have borewells. Nobody should have borewells. We should just work together to lift the water table.
Yeah.
If you lift
so
the
that
water
everybody
table,
can have access.
then everyone has water to it. You don't need a borewell after that.
Right.
And you don't need electricity to pump water from down also. Even that gets, So I'm saying where people have worked as a community, we find them to be prosperous. And where women, are given the opportunity, you find that things change dramatically.
Right. There's a couple more questions. Young man in the orange shirt there. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm a student. I really would like to know how I can contribute to all this. I have 2 hours a day and I can't see anything around me, but I would really like to contribute to all this, towards healthcare, vaccination, all this. So what can I do?
I think that's a wonderful question. I think that comes from the right place. A lot of people feel exactly what you feel. Well, Bill Gates?
I think we should make it clear, through our website where people who care about these things, where they can get involved, either on an advocacy front of view or helping the NGOs. I'd have to look into, on the education front, can Protham take that type of volunteer time? Are there people who let you mentor a kid from a very poor part of the city, go into the slum and help them think about their education? There should be NGOs that are dying to get that capacity, and certainly our digital tools should let you match up and find the opportunity that's a fit for you. I don't know if that platform's present in India.
Well, actually, there are two things I want to say to you. One is that at this point of time, you really should apply your mind as to how you can help. And perhaps you are probably the best answer to that. What are your strengths? What are the things that you can offer? Maybe you're good in math, so you can teach math to the kids in your in the slum near your house. So you can choose what is your strength and share it with others. So that's one way of looking at it. This is one of the things, in SMJ, in Satyamev Jayate, we realized that we could have done more on. And in season 2, we're working on that. Is exactly what Bill was saying, is that when we take an issue, we also create partners and try and figure out who is doing what in this field, which we are doing in any case. But on our website, which has got huge amount of hits, if we bring together people who need help and people who are wanting to help, and we give them a common platform to meet on.
Great, wonderful.
So that is what we are going to do in season 2.
And that's where Aamir Khan and Bill Gates are going to tap. He's going to give you the technology to do it, and you're going to give the reach.
That'd be great.
Yeah, you do need technology to get these two together.
For example, that happened very organically in one of our episodes, which was on alcoholism. So in our episode on alcohol abuse and and alcoholism, we had a very strong partner, which was AA. AA was our partner. They came on to give us a lot of information and help and etc. And as you all know, at the end of the episode, we would always donate a lot of money. People would donate. Viewers from all over the country would donate to that organization. And AA refused to take money because they said, our policies, we don't take money. So they didn't take money. But how we worked together, which is what gave us the idea for the following season, is AA and all its members, organized themselves. And on the show, we gave the information about AA and said, here is a number. If you have a problem with alcohol, and if you feel you need help, this is the number to call. I think they had 30,000 members up till now, in the last 65 years of their existence in India. I think in about 2 weeks, they had some 300,000 calls.
Tremendous. So that's the one way
now,
to
when you help one alcoholic person, you help not only that person, but you help their entire family.
Yeah, huge.
So so what AA is doing is really amazing. And we were the wire media who could spread that information and bring people together who are wanting and able to help to people who need help. Now that is something that happened organically in the case of that particular episode. But we want to replicate that for our season 2 in all the various topics.
I have just one last question, which is totally different from everything else we've talked about. It's something else you get emotional about. Would you like to have seen Steve Jobs here? Well, what would you have said to him in this whole process in chapter 2?
Well, Steve, did brilliant work in the IT industry, and it was a pleasure to partner with him on the Mac, compete with him. And he was a brilliant designer, and I'm sure he would have gone on to do great things in other areas.
Probably would have joined you.
I don't know.
New venture.
It's a tragedy he's not here so we can see what his great sense of aesthetics and justice would have let him do in the next phase of his life.
You miss him?
I miss working with him, and I got to see him quite a bit in the last year, and he and I got to talk about things.
Wonderful.
But he was a very unique person.
Yeah. We all miss him actually. What a man. Okay, quick question.
I live in that region of Punjab where hepatitis C is really very widespread, and my own dad has undergone vaccination therapy. So in hepatitis C there is a risk that the pregnant woman may transmit that to the fetus. Okay, and secondly, it is like if she undergoes the vaccine therapy, so she is advised not to get pregnant because the child is at the risk of developing birth defects. So what she can do?
A vaccine, which is being worked on, would prevent people from getting it in the first place. In parallel with that, there's people working on so-called antiviral drugs that would help people who actually have the infection. As yet, they're quite complex and quite expensive, and so unfortunately, it's probably going to be a while before we have broad therapies. It's being worked on, but that's a tough one. Hepatitis B, we got the vaccine for, but hepatitis C is right on the medical frontier.
Okay, right. Round of applause, and whoever wants to dance with Aamir, come and dance. Let's have the music.
जब लाइफ हो out of control, होठों को करके गोल, होठों को करके गोल, सीटी बजा के बोल.